reason I'm mentioning Joe, the ATF also must watch Channel TV because they've been out to visit Joe Blankenship.
3 times?
Three times, yeah. So you don't see Joe here this morning. I don't know whether his compound is being readied for attack, but he is an outspoken American, and I think that it's necessary that we defend people like Joe Blankenship. I tried to get the ordinance, the search warrant that was filed against Waco, Texas from Bob Corbin in our conversations, and he said it's so lengthy and detailed, Carl, that you probably wouldn't understand it anyway, which is the same thing as saying you're too damn dumb. And by the way, we have him scheduled to speak in September. So he's the leader and in charge of the American Rifle Association, so NRA, and former Attorney General of the state of Arizona. Yes, Ralph?
Maury Free called me a couple days ago.
I was just going to get into Maury Free.
Forgive me, I didn't know.
Yeah. See, you jumped the gun.
Thank you very much.
Maury Free, who's not ever been an attorney general and not ever got involved, made sure I got a copy of it. So, and I mean, it's been difficult in the last 15 minutes, but I've read through about 6 pages. And they hardly didn't go into detail about that there was anything they were doing about children in here at all. And it's 21 pages. It was a sealed search warrant. And when they presented this to the leader there, he said, "What do you mean sealed search warrant? You either got one or you haven't." He says, "Get out of here," which is what any normal individual would do. And I thought it was interesting. They want to search the residence of Vernon Wayne Howe and others at Route 7, Box 471-B, also known as Carmel Center, Waco, McLean County, Texas. Its premises, vehicles, underground structures located on entire premises of 77-acre compound. See attached photos and property descriptions. Anybody know anything about the Constitution? No. It says you must say what you're looking for and the exact place to be searched.
The specific items.
Not 77 acres, right?
And the evidence you have.
And all the gophers you can find, right?
Who signed it?
It's,
Judge Buckner.
I knew it was going to be fun having Mike here today. Well, the U.S. magistrate was Dennis J. Green, and the judicial officer was Dennis, let's see, Dennis Green is the main one, and at the end of it signed by Davy Algira, Special Agent, Bureau of ATF.
Carl?
Everybody knows that there's no Bureau of ATF. That's why they have on their uniform ATF. A fraudulent filing of any paper has to be canceled out if government has brought it under the wrong auspices. So he's...
All freedom terminated.
Ronald Reagan ended the Bureau while he was in there. He said it was not be financed anymore as a bureau, and that's why they don't have BATF on their uniforms. It just says ATF. But this is filed as a BATF, which is a non-existent bureau. And Dennis G. Green, United States Magistrate Judge, is the final signer to the document. Yes, Ralph? He had his hand up.
If I may, I'd like to just read the Fourth Amendment so we know exactly that doesn't comply. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized.
Thanks, Ralph. The things in here As to the hardware, the guns and such, most are not illegal. And the testimony in here of one woman seeing him fire a rapid-fire gun, she said she was sure it was a machine gun because it fired rapidly and hit the ground and bounced around. She seen him shoot it. As your evidence. Is she an expert? Has she ever fired one? Does she know the difference between one that's not automatic, semi-automatic, or single fire? Probably not. But we will never get the chance to examine that when we bury the evidence. Yesterday, there was an objection went in because they continued to bulldoze all the grounds so that there is no evidence to use against them. Does everybody understand that the ATF does not belong to the United States? Belongs to the United Nations. Yes, sir.
They're bulldozing the evidence at Waco, and they destroyed the evidence in Randy Weaver's case, and all they're doing is proving that the American terrorist force
Are the best in the world.
Work any nonsense from the rest of us.
Yeah, that's right. And you won't find very many Americans like we have in this room that would stand up
ATF
against
is
this.
American terrorist force, regardless of what they may tell you it is.
Yes, sir.
You need a good copy of the affidavit that that search warrant is based on. Whoever signed that, that's the one you need to look to.
Okay. We'll get it, and if anybody's interested, we'll get extra copies. And anybody that's interested in the search warrant? What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4?
23.
All right. We'll get about 20 of them made up. Yes?
Did that warrant exist at the time it was served, or was that time we have it sometime later?
We don't know because a sealed warrant is one that won't issue. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And now there's an article, I left it in the car. I should have brought it in, but on the children in school are chanting how wonderful Janet Reno is. And they have a regular chant, you know?
You're kidding.
Yes, in the school systems. The school systems, you do know, are government systems controlled out of Washington, D.C. And do you know what you call places where they have chants? Anybody know what you'd call that, where you have a chant? Not, what's the next thing to a church? A cult. Exactly. Yeah. So they're teaching these children to be the opposite of the children that were in the compound.
You mean cult or occult?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, either one, we kill them if they do something we don't want them to do.
Yes, Margaret.
April 19th, which was the day of the fire, was also the 50th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising,
Yes.
which was part of the celebration.
And the Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it sure put a damper on the Holocaust Memorial, didn't it?
It's going to cost us $12 million a year.
No more where we remember the Alamo, let's remember Waco.
Carl, in the Weaver trial, they are barring anybody that isn't of the regular media. Anybody else that tries to get in, they won't let them in.
It's the only.
Yeah. You know what they did to Randy Weaver? I understand that they shaved his head in prison
He must have had lots.
so that he could fill into the category they're setting him up in as a skinhead. That's what I've been told.
I hope his lawyer had the presence of mind to say, was your hair in this condition when you came into the jail system? Here's the prison system.
I'm going to give you a couple of little things that I've discovered in law the last few days during this week, and I thought it may or may not be of interest to you. Under 28412A, a non-resident are exempt from traffic violations. Let you think about that, and let me know next week what you think about it.
Non-resident or non-resident alien?
It says non-resident. How many people in the room are residents?
Not anymore.
See? If you're a non-resident, means that you're not a resident and you're alien to the District of Columbia. But this is for the benefit of the United Nations, and the United Nations we have made so many treaties with them already, giving away the rights. Well, I shouldn't say we, the United States, that foreign government. Under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, we're guaranteed a Republican form of government, which is of fact a separation of powers. And I always believed, probably as you did too, that meant having a legislative, a judicial, and executive branches of separation of powers. Not true. We found two cases, and one of them says the separation of powers of government versus power of the people. There's your separation of power. And if you don't grasp the right to do something about it right now, you're going to lose what's left. You have the power, and you are the separation. And unless you make that distinction, that you're not one of those people. So I just thought I'd throw those couple in. Oh, foreign state immunity is 1605, section Title 28, refers to a freely associated compact of states. Did you ever hear that before? Where have you heard the word compact used? With what the governor of Arizona is trying to do with the Indians is form a compact, different than a treaty. It alters treaties. And so a freely associated compact of states are all the states of the original Union. And they've changed the words, and we've got to pay attention to when they're changing the words in law, they're changing the meanings as well. And there's a case of Barron versus Baltimore. Now, the Barron versus Baltimore case is before the 14th Amendment. The only thing I saw that was really significant in that, this is a case about a drainage way where a fella had a dock and all the big ships could come in Baltimore Bay there. And the city of Baltimore changed some streets up there. You imagine how many years ago it was being before the 14th Amendment. And silt or dirt came down and washed out his gorgeway that was a natural gorgeway there where large ships could come right up to his dock and unload. And his whole business went down the tubes. He did not have the right, it was concluded in there according to the, I believe it was the, in the Fifth Amendment, to have had his property taken by the city of Baltimore because it was the amendments represent people from who were within the government, which he was not. And all of those takings would be from people within the government. And I'll get the text if anybody's interested on the entire trial as soon as we can find it down there. All I got was the headlines on the thing. And what it establishes is that Constitution wasn't made for you. It was made for people in the government. So
Citizens.
for citizens, exactly. When President George Washington wrote to Governor Tom Jefferson, he wrote, "Dear Citizen Jefferson," on that letter. And he signed it, Citizen Washington. And when we dug into that meaning, it meant that he was now within the government. Both parties were within the government. And that's what made them their citizenship established. And we've been taught in school all these years that to be a good citizen was wonderful, and that's what you ought to be. And actually what you ought to be is one heck of a good American.
Well, to be a good citizen, you pay an income tax.
Yes, sir.
Did that incorporate them?
Have a government job.
Yes, that did incorporate them. Exactly. You know your government's incorporated. It's operating today. The personally held corporation. It's my pleasure. Yes, Ralph?
I just have another comment to change the subject a little bit real quick. Paul Harvey said on the radio about 2 weeks ago that in Florida there's going to be a law passed that if you are in high school and you drop out, you'll forfeit your driver's license. So once again, driving is not a right, it's a privilege. It can be taken away by the state if you drop out of school.
You do wrong.
Yeah.
When you,
That makes a driver's license a contract with the state then, doesn't it?
Yes.
we still recommend that you sign your driver's application without prejudice, and which gives you an opening into the common law. I must tell you again one thing, is that any document you sign without prejudice cannot be presented in court as evidence. So that's a very important factor. So
Say that again?
This is news to me.
any document you sign without prejudice will not be used in court as evidence.
Give us
So-
an example.
Well, for instance, if you have a contract between you and another individual, not government, and you want to use that contract as evidence in your case that this existed, the judge may rule it out and not leave it on as testimony because it was signed without prejudice.
Does the person that,
So you don't want to sign everything with that, but you certainly want to sign anything that's an agreement with government with that. See? So now,
Sign a private contract, they may not accept it if you sign it without prejudice.
yeah, if you're trying to sue for recovery in the court of law on that contract, and you want to present the contract as evidence, and you've signed it without prejudice, it may not be evidential in the trial for demand. Depending on the judge, of course, but the instructions are not to accept it. Yes, Margaret?
I don't know how generally well-known it is, but there is a new constitution waiting in the wings that our government is already using against us. They allow us to think we're still under our constitution, but they have one that's called the New States Constitution, and it's ready to use at any time.
That's what I've been trying to say. I know there's another constitution, but I'm saying that I think our constitution, what we're beginning to uncover, is not for the people. The Constitution was for citizens, and it was drafted for such. And the protection is if you're in that jurisdiction of a citizen, then you use that protection. We're finding that there's a lot of United Nations law that we can use right now that's favorable for us. And so we're going to investigate more and more into it. And I spend most of my free time reading all these briefs and that to just see if we can learn a little bit more.
How can the United Nations have something that's favorable for us as individual Americans?
It says that they are protected through non-resident status. So people within our country, for instance, at my complex now, we have probably 3 German groups. We have 1 Japanese, 1 Chinese. We have some from India and Yugoslavia. Now, all those people are protected under the United Nations treaty within our country. And they are actually foreign status, total foreign status. They have more rights under the United Nations Charter than any of you in this room do. However, using the same basis that we're non-residents to the District of Columbia, we have more protection if we state it correctly. We have the original, we had original rights before the Constitution was drawn. And they were God-given rights. And you had those specific rights. And one of those rights was a right to hold property. Property has no rights. But the individual has a right to hold that property.
Inalienable.
Inalienable right. And then they included that into the Constitution.